flight was delayed.
Oh, I thought you said his wife. And I thought,
No, flight.
that moved quickly.
So, yeah, he's not gonna be in until this afternoon.
Good morning and welcome to the April 20th, 2023 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the agenda today, there are speaker request forms to the left of the dais. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the secretary. At this time, we would also like to ask that if any member of the audience has a cell phone or other electronic device, that you either turn it off or turn the ringer to silent. If you need to take a call, please step out to the hallway so the meeting is not disrupted. The public hearing on item number 1, the approval of the January 5th, 2023 Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting minutes is hereby opened.
I'll second.
All right, Karen made the motion to approve the January 5th minutes, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 2 on the zoning board.
Good morning, Zoning Board of Adjustment. 23 VA003 is a variance to allow a two-story, 19.5-foot high accessory structure in lieu of the maximum height of 15 feet. Here's the site, located at 1355 Pine Hills Drive. The property is 1.98 acres in size and heavily forested. The property is zoned low-density residential. Future land use identifies the site as low-density neighborhood. The site is accessed by Pine Hills Drive, which is identified as a local street on the major street plan. Here's the site plan. The site consists of a single-family residence with a footprint of 2,034 square feet with 3 sheds that consist of 642 square feet and a dedicated carport that consists of 360 square feet. The proposed 2-story garage to the southwest corner will be 2 stories tall and have a gross floor area of 3,768.5 square feet. The gross floor is broken down as such: 2,418 square feet dedicated to first floor garage space, 1,130 square feet dedicated to the second story loft, and 220.5 square feet dedicated to the second story covered deck. The first floor garage space will have a ceiling height of 12 feet to allow clearance of a 10-foot overhead door. The second story loft will have a ceiling height just over 8 feet. The garage will be accessed by the existing dirt driveway on site. The second story will have 2 methods of ingress and egress, as one interior staircase and an exterior staircase attached to the covered deck. Here are the elevations. The applicant is proposing an architectural style that resembles a barn. You can see the covered deck, the stairs, and the overhead door I mentioned earlier. The applicant is proposing to build the garage into the grade to mitigate the impact of construction and the height of the detached garage on site. Here's the grade you can see they're building into. Here's a zoomed in version of the front elevation. According to city ordinance, building height is measured from the finished grade of the front of the building to the main height level of the gable roof. The dotted line on the elevation represents the mean height level of the proposed detached garage, which is 19.5 feet. Here's the first floor plan. Here you can see the 2,418 square feet of dedicated garage space. Here's the second floor plan. You can see the 1,130 square feet of dedicated loft and 220.5 square feet of dedicated covered deck with the stairs. All right. Going to go back to the elevations here. So according to the Board of Adjustments review criteria, the variance should be denied due to no reasonable use of the land exists. The site contains more than enough area to construct a detached garage and loft to comply with code. Also, according to the Board of Adjustment review criteria, the variance should be denied due to minimum adjustments can be made to the garage design to comply with code. The applicant can lose 1.5 feet of height to be at 18 feet in height and eligible for a zoning exception. However, staff would like to know there are reasons to consider approval. According to the Board of Adjustment review criteria, variance shall not be granted to allow land use otherwise excluded from the particular district in which requested. A detached garage is a permitted accessory structure within the low-density residential district. Also, a variance may be granted where the special circumstances or conditions do not apply generally in the district. The subject site is 1.98 acres in size, heavily forested, and the closest neighbor is more than 100 feet away. All conditions not generally found in low-density residential district. Lastly, the granting of any variance will not adversely impact the neighborhood, be detrimental to public welfare, or conflict with the city's comprehensive plan. The proposed detached garage does not adversely impact the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to the public welfare, or conflict with the comprehensive plan. The density of the Pine Hill subdivision results in 8 properties being within 500 feet of the proposed detached garage. There will be little to no adverse impact in the neighborhood with no public welfare being harmed. The proposed detached garage does not conflict with the comprehensive plan. So here's a little buffer map. The white square is the proposed detached garage location. As you can see, the closest property to the garage is about 200 feet away to the southeast down here. And the 400-foot buffer just to show that they're the 8 properties I was talking about earlier that are outside of it. Here's the site. Here's looking up the driveway from Pine Hills. Here's looking north on Pine Hills. Here's looking south on Pine Hills. Here's the existing house. Here's where the garage will be built. So this is from where the garage will be built. Here's a view from where, this is the view looking south. Here's the view looking west. Here's the view looking north. Here's the view looking east. As you can see, no neighbors will be affected by this proposed garage. You can barely see it with the heavily forested area around it. With all that being said, since the detached garage only meets 3 of the 5 Board of Adjustment review criteria, not all 5, staff is recommending that the variance to allow a 19.5-foot tall accessory structure be denied. The applicant and I are in the audience for questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. Are there any questions from the commission on this item?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, Vicki?
if I might, you may have noticed the size of the garage is excessive for a residential lot. And at your next planning commission meeting, not the one directly after this one, but in 2 weeks, you will see a conditional use permit to allow the oversized garage. However, before that can be considered, the variance must be acted on first. I think Alex did a great job explaining the criteria and the conditions. We fell on the side of recommending to deny because it would just take a slight alteration to allow the height with just an exception and not the variance. And it just seems like they're going beyond reasonable use of the property by seeking the full variance. And so we fell on the side of recommending denial.
Thanks, Vicki. Eric Hikas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Question about the sink on the second level. Is that a wet bar or is it a kitchenette? Just curious.
So here's the second floor. There's no sink on the second floor. You were talking about this one.
Okay, that's on the main?
Yeah.
All right, it just reads a little.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other questions on this? Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is there a reason why they don't want to adjust it to make sure that they can just get that exception instead of going through this process?
I'll have Mike answer that, the applicant. He's in the audience.
Okay.
If you're willing, once you're at the microphone, just identify yourself.
My name is Mike Swenson. I'm wanting this variance because basically I'm going to retire pretty soon. I'm looking for a place to do hobbies and stuff. I want to put a car lift in there. So with a 12-foot ceiling and the truss height and then putting height on the top floor of 8 foot, it becomes higher than your variance allows.
I'm not sure I understood that.
Thank you. Karen, do you have anything else? Looks like it went to Mike. Sorry, I'll come back to you. Mike Quasney?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the notes, you mentioned that only the neighbor to the north would be able to see this. So there's only one neighbor that can see it. Is it because of the height, or if it were lower, would the neighbor still see it?
If it was lower, the neighbors would still see it. And they'd probably see a rooftop instead of a frontal. It'd probably be a worse view for them, I would think.
And are you matching the existing house for colors and so forth?
I am going to be remodeling my house after this is done. So yes, it's all going to kind of get all done within the next year or two.
Okay, thank you.
Karen?
Okay, maybe I didn't quite understand the difference in the height, because you're going to put a lift in there for your vehicles and stuff. And so if you had it lower, you would not be able to lift it as high?
Yes, I would not be able to lift a car high enough to get, it's still almost kind of low the way it is, but I didn't want to get too high up there either, so.
Okay, thank you, that answers that.
All right, other questions, comments from the commission? Karen?
Okay, I'm going to make a motion to approve this variance, and I have to state a reason, and I think that I'm looking at some of the things that we should use. I think this is a special circumstance basically because it's out in the middle of nowhere compared to, I shouldn't say that, I'm sorry. But it's not next to any houses in town, and you've got enough buffer around you that I think it'll fit all right within that area. So let's see if there's anything else in here I should state. So I think it's a special circumstance. I think that the variance is in harmony with the general purposes, so that's my motion.
All right, Karen made the motion, and as she stated, and Mike Quasney seconded that motion. Is there any discussion on the motion to approve the variance to allow a height of 19'6" in lieu of the maximum 15 feet? All those in favor then of granting the variance, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
All right, that's the only agenda item on, or I shouldn't say that. That's the last agenda item on Zoning Board of Adjustment today. I'd look for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, Vince made the motion and Mike Quasney seconded. All those in favor of adjournment of Zoning Board of Adjustment, please say aye. Aye. We will now commence the Rapid City Planning Commission meeting for April 20th, 2023. If any member of the audience wishes to speak to an item on the Planning Commission agenda, again, there are speaker request forms along the left wall. Please fill out the request with the agenda number of the item you wish to speak to and hand it to the staff seated nearby. And again, if you still haven't turned off your cell phone or turned it to silent, please do so now. Items 1 through 4 have been placed on the consent calendar today and may be approved as a group. Action will be taken on all consent items in accordance with staff's recommendation by a single vote. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar by any planning commissioner, staff member, or audience member for separate consideration at this time. The findings of this planning commission are recommendations to the city council. The city council will make the final decision with the exception of the following item. Item 3, 23 UR 010. The Rapid City Planning Commission action on this item is final unless any party appeals that decision to the Rapid City Council. All appeals must be submitted in writing to the Department of Community Development by close of business on the 7th full calendar day following action by the Planning Commission. Are there any items 1 through 4 that staff would like removed?
Number 3, please.
Okay. Any items 1, 2, or 4 that Planning Commission would like to remove? And any items 1, 2, or 4 that any audience member would like removed for separate consideration? The chair would then entertain a motion to approve items 1, 2, and 4 in accordance with staff's recommendations.
Motion to approve items 1, 2, and 4 in accordance with the staff's recommendations.
All right, Vince made the motion, and Mike Quasney seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 3.
So this item is a conditional use permit to allow a child care center for up to 20 children at 3747 Sonora Drive. The applicant lives at the property and currently operates an in-home daycare with 12 children. There will be 2 staff members for this proposed child care center. The property is zoned low-density residential district. The future land use is low-density neighborhood. The property is located west of 5th Street, which is classified as a principal arterial street on the city's major street plan. This is the site plan submitted. 4 parking spaces are required and provided for on the driveway. To meet the accessibility requirement, the applicant will be constructing a new ADA space southeast of the front entrance. Children will be dropped off between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. and picked up between 3:30 p.m. and 5:30 p.m. Monday to Friday. Each family will have prearranged time slot to pick up or drop off children, and it is anticipated there will only be 2 vehicles pulling in and out of the driveway at a time. This parking plan will be reviewed and signed by the parents at registration of this child care center. So this is the main floor plan. As you can see, the attached garage is currently being used as a gym. The gross floor of this home is approximately 2,700 square feet. This is the lower level floor plan. 700 square feet of indoor play space is required for the proposed use. 1,360 square feet is being provided throughout the home. Indoor play space does not include permanent stationary equipment, hallways, bathrooms, offices, or kitchens. Public notice was posted on the property. This is looking north on Sonora and the south view as well. We did receive 1 email with concerns on this application. There was concerns that covenants may prohibit this use and concerns about the lack of screening and noise. Just a reminder that the city does not enforce covenants. Staff is recommending that this item be approved subject to the stipulations outlined in the report. I'll stand by for any questions, and the applicant is also in the audience.
Thank you. I do have a speaker request from the applicant, Jenny Jimenez, if you'd like to address the commission.
Hello, I'm Jenny Jimenez, and I'm the owner of the daycare. I just was here to answer any questions if we have anybody here that came today to ask any questions. So.
Wonderful. Thank you. Anything from the commission? Karen?
Thank you. I have one question as far as the gym space, and it's in the garage. Is there a door that goes from the house into the garage without going outside? I couldn't see one on the site plan, so.
Yes, that does show on the main floor plan there. It's between the coat and the shoe room, kind of towards the center of the floor plan there. Do you see where the door is between there, and then there's a stairwell that goes down into the gymnasium.
Okay. And how do you get to that room?
When you go through the main entrance of the daycare, it's just right in the shoe room is where the door is to lead to the stairwell to get into the gymnasium. I think it's on there. I can't see really well. I should have brought my reading glasses.
Is it a sliding glass, or sliding door?
No, it's just a 36-inch door. It should be up a little ways from where your pointer is. Yeah. Do you see this? Okay. This right here. Right. There's the stairwell, and then there's the door. Yes.
So basically, right by the washer and dryer, is
Mhm.
there an opening there?
Yes, it's the coat and the shoe room, and then that also has the washer and dryer in that room.
Okay, thanks.
Eric Hikas?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is the egress from the basement, there is an exterior stairwell for that, is that correct?
Yes, we will be installing
Okay,
an
that's it.
emergency exit
That's
door.
what that is,
Yeah.
okay. That will be installed.
Yes,
Okay.
along with the stairwell leading up to the back play yard.
Okay, thank you.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if the garage is being used as a play area or a gymnasium, excuse me, where will your personal vehicles be parked during?
Okay, actually, we don't use the gymnasium as a garage at all, and so I have parking spaces, as you can see on the diagram there, where staff parks, and there's just me and another staff person.
Yeah, I can't remember. It would be those two parking spaces north of the driveway. The tandem parking spaces are staff parking spaces, and in the south would be an unloading zone and then parking for the childcare center.
Okay, and I mean, there's still available parking on the street, is that correct? It's up to 2 hours?
Yeah, there is available parking on the street, but we're not planning on using that.
Okay.
Ideally, we wouldn't.
If I could defer to Vicky for a moment, please.
Vicky?
Yeah, so this is a residential street, so it's not limited to 2 hours, but we would not support a daycare that required using the on-street parking. It's essential that the children be loaded and unloaded on the property and not in the street.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. From staff, has there been anybody that has called in and said they object to this?
Mr. Chair,
Vicky?
if I might, we did attach a letter that we received, I believe it was yesterday, from a neighbor. And this neighbor is, if you go to the aerial, go back to one of the zoning maps. There we go. So at the intersection of Teresita Drive and Sonora Drive, at the south end of that intersection, just a lot or two over, is where that letter came from. And their concern is that they've got covenants on their block that wouldn't allow any commercial activity. We did point out in our response to them that it did not include the subject property. We could not find a similar covenant at Register of Deeds. More importantly, we are not authorized to enforce covenant, and so that would be a civil matter between the property owner and the homeowners association if there is existing covenant that would prevent this. Looking at the concerns of noise from that that neighbor, even though there may be some backyard noise if the children are all out playing in the backyard, but it will be fenced, the children will be in a secure area, and if this were from an immediate adjacent owner, there would probably be more validity to the impact of noise. We did not receive any comments from any of them.
Thanks, Vicky. Karen, anything?
Oh, I just didn't, sorry.
Eric?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I like your graphics. The plans are easy to read, and I love the car icon.
I had to
It's
add
very
that.
refreshing to see some illustration on them. I do have one concern. The parking plan, you've got an ADA space there that requires driving through and another parking space to get to it. Is that, walk me through how that works, I guess.
Well, they're gonna build a retaining wall and then a way to get up to that parking spot.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Vicky?
Eric, thank you. Staff had the same comments. Because these are scheduled drop-offs, if there was an incident where she had a child that had ADA needs, then that child would be arranged to be dropped off where 2 of those other spaces would be open, so that maneuvering in and out. And this is a residential area, and to be able to find some real estate to put ADA parking is very unusual, so we're excited about that. We're also excited that this is one of the rare residential childcare facilities that is actually taking it upon themselves to ensure ADA accessibility for the children.
So that space that you drive through to get to the ADA space was kind of like a loading space, it sounds like, or a short-term parking space?
Yes.
Okay, that answers my question, thank you.
All right, other comments or questions from the commission on this item?
I'll make a motion.
Vince?
Motion to approve in accordance with the staff recommendations.
I'll second it.
All right, Vince made the motion to approve item number 3 per the 6 staff stipulations, and Karen seconded that motion. Karen, did you have anything you wanted to add?
I was
Okay. Any discussion on the motion from anyone else? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 5.
Good morning. Item number 5 is 23 UR 009, which is a major amendment to a conditional use permit to allow a medical cannabis manufacturing facility located at 1810 Rand Road, Building B. This is aerial photograph showing the location of the property along Rand Road. As you can see, there's a structure already to the northeastern portion of the lot. That was approved in February of 2010 as a conditional use permit to allow a medical cannabis cultivation facility. And the applicant is then proposing to build an additional building on the property to do medical cannabis manufacturing. The property is zoned light industrial district, which is one of the districts where cannabis cultivation and manufacturing is allowed within the city zoning ordinance. Future land use is also light industrial on the property. Major street plan identifies Rand Road as a collector street. Here's a site plan of the property showing the existing 5,323 square foot medical cannabis cultivation facility, and then located up here towards the front of the property closer to Rand Road is the proposed 2,400 square foot manufacturing facility. Showing parking and circulation all paved. They meet all parking requirements. Some elevations of the proposed manufacturing facility. And some site photos. This is looking into the property from Rand Road. You can see the conditional use permit sign was posted. And this is the existing cannabis cultivation facility. Up here in the front area, in this grassy area, is where the proposed manufacturing facility would be constructed. This is looking to the north along Rand Road. And looking south along Rand Road, as you can see, this is located in an industrial area in our community. And then this is looking across the street and across Rand Road to an auto repair facility. I did receive a call from the owner of the auto repair facility. He had some concerns about what was going in. When I informed him that it was a manufacturing facility and not a dispensary, he had no concerns with any sort of manufacturing. He's had really no issues with the cultivation. He did state that there was one time he had an odor issue and it was addressed very quickly. I believe the facility had a filter that went out and allowed some odor to escape, but then they were certainly quickly rectified that situation. When I was on site taking site photos, there was no noticeable odor of cannabis anywhere on the property. Again, this is located in the light industrial district. It is not located within 1,000 feet of a school or 500 feet of a park, residential zone district, church, or daycare. And staff recommends approval of the medical cannabis manufacturing facility with the stipulations as outlined in the staff report. I'm available for any questions. The applicant is also in the audience, and we're available if you have anything.
Thanks, Kip. I'll jump in since there's no other lights. It looked like there might be some stormwater that runs through the front of this property. I assume that's being reviewed as part of this, and we're not going to put a building in the way of that.
As part of the building permit, they will have to show drainage for that property.
Wonderful. Any other questions or comments? All right, Mike Gallagher made the motion to approve item number 5 with the stipulations as listed, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion to approve? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 6.
Item number 6 is 23 VR 002, which is an application to vacate some right-of-way located along First Street south of Quincy Street. Here's the aerial photograph showing the area of right-of-way that is proposed to be vacated. The zoning of the property is high-density residential district. And again, you can see that the proposed area vacation is adjacent to that zoning district. Future land use of the property is urban neighborhood, and both First Street and Quincy Street are identified as local streets on the city's major street plan. Here's a graphic showing the proposed vacation. It's kind of hard to see up on your screen, but it's a 20-foot wide strip between the edge of the property in Quincy Street all the way south to this alley. The alley de facto serves as an extension of Columbus Street. Some site photos. This is looking into the property from First Street. As you can see, they're using the current right-of-way as parking. They do have an opening here along First Street that is wider than our normal allowed driveway opening. This is looking north along First Street, back from the alley, also also serving as Columbus Street. What I want to point out is that vacating the right-of-way here would then create a discontinuous street section. The right-of-way along First Street is consistently the same width all the way to the north. This is looking across the street from the subject property, looking across First Street. And then this is looking north along First Street, and then this is Quincy Street right here. And just another shot down First Street to show the consistent right-of-way width along First Street. In reviewing this, Public Works staff has indicated that there is a future project to construct a 20-inch water main from a storage reservoir that will come somewhere down First Street. The location of that water main has not been designed yet, but there's concern from Public Works that any reduction in the width of the right-of-way could possibly impact the design and construction of the future water main. And based on that recommendation, staff recommends denial of the vacation of right-of-way request in order to protect the future water main construction and also to maintain a consistent right-of-way width along First Street. The applicant and the engineer are in the audience if you have any questions for them. Otherwise, I stand by for any questions.
Thanks, Kip. I do have a speaker request from Alan Schreier, if you'd like to address the commission.
I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to speak on this project. Go back to the showing the overall right-of-way city map back a few. Yes, that's a good one. We didn't know about the city's possible water main project, so we want to help accommodate that. My thoughts as an engineer are as the right-of-way width. If you notice, the First Street to the south just runs into private property. We believe that's That street's not going to be extended through there in the future. It's, another half a block, it's dead-ended. And we think these are platted in the old days when they had lots of land, and these 100-foot right-of-ways through town. And that was great for the development of Rapid City, but we think this is going to be an isolated area. It's going to remain residential for the long term. It's not going to go through to some major connecting road to the south, for example. So we believe it's feasible to give up some right-of-way without really impacting any future plans the city of Rapid City might have. A water main certainly takes requirements to put in as far as width goes, but there's still 80 feet left of right-of-way to do that. And the water main that is there now is on the east side of First Street. It's across the street from this property. So I believe that a sensible plan would be to be near that existing 4-inch main to avoid a lot of, you're going to have to probably tear up the old 4-inch main or do things to abandon it, and to dig on both sides of the street to do that seems a little bit, I would say that's more feasible. They're going to put it on the same side as the existing water main. And excuse me, I kind of catch my thoughts here. So we believe that some right-of-way can be given up without really impacting the future project. The owner here is here today, and you can see that this project, we're going to lose some. Okay.
Keep going.
I'll go
Sorry,
fast.
Mr. Schreier.
The neighborhood would be nice to see some improvement in the neighborhood. The owner has cleared up a lot of the property as it is. That retaining wall that you see going in is an effort to make the property more usable, more appealing to look at. He would like to do an additional project in the future. And one of the things that's a concern here is I guess a non-conforming lot is what the city calls it. His existing structure is like 5 feet from the existing right-of-way line, and the future setbacks might be up to 20 feet, we believe. And that was really restricting what we can do with the property in the future. So this would alleviate, giving up some right-of-way would alleviate some of those setback issues that could come up in the future. The owner is willing to work with the council, the planning board, the city staff to accommodate some of these things. We would like to at least, if we keep pressing with our vacation request, but there are some things that we like to discuss if that is not going to be suitable for the Planning Commission to approve. We had one thing about the water service that would be relocated. The owner is willing to do that because right now the current curb stop's on the right-of-way line. If that shifts 20 feet to the east, willing to move that. They talked about a corner of the right-of-way to be maintained off of the Columbus Street alley, I'm going to call it, and the owner's more likely to be willing to work with the city staff on leaving some space for turning radiuses, et cetera, things like that. So we're hoping that they'll see the need to make some improvements in this area in general, and this vacation right-of-way request might facilitate some of that.
Thank you. I assume you're Mr. Huber. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, can I?
Yeah,
Real quick.
if you just, again, identify
Okay,
yourself.
just a little bit about myself. I went to school of mines, graduated in '92. My daughters are attending there now, and we bought this property so they could live there. And what we really noticed is there's a heavy homeless problem up there. The people are living up in there. So the first thing I did for my daughters was clean out all the vegetation in the area that it was actually city right-of-way. So we got down to it a little bit. We're doing another project in town. So we excavated all that dirt, we got a permit, and Alan designed a retaining wall. Looks very nice. And what we'd really like to do is add an addition to that house. Add a couple more bedrooms to it, and then a couple car garage so my wife and I can come up and stay with our kids. And when you have the existing setbacks, we couldn't conform that with that. We couldn't even attach to the house. So mainly really what we want the 20-foot right-of-way is for a setback distance, so we can just continue to build the exact house or add an addition to it. So that's mainly my input, I guess.
All right, thank you. Eric Heikus?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A comment and a question. Like, I would agree with Mr. Schreier.
Schreier, yes.
Schreier. That is a massive right-of-way for this small, kind of quaint neighborhood in terms of the width. The right-of-way itself will terminate at that southern boundary. What is that parcel? What's the ownership of that parcel to the south? Is that Park Forest, or what is that?
I don't think I looked that up myself personally. Maybe the city staff knows who has that big south
The large
property.
continuous track there, I guess.
Vicky?
Are you asking what is the zoning?
What is the ownership? What is the
It's city right away.
city right-of-way? Okay. And this is a question for Public Works then. That water main construction, is that going to go through that area to the south, or does it terminate at the end of the block that is First Street? There it is, my question.
Todd? Yeah, he's on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so the property to the south is owned by the city of Rapid City as well.
Okay.
And so we have, so the water main will likely come down the reservoir over to First Street and then down First Street. If that answers your question.
It does. Thank you, Todd.
Can I follow up, Todd? Sorry. The 20-inch water main, will that replace the existing water main on that street, or is it a separate line
That's-
running down?
That is to be determined, actually. So we have multiple non-conforming water services. So Columbus Street was an alley. It does function as a street now because there's properties on the south side. So they have water and sewer services that are all combined as private services that run to the east of First Street. And so the 20-inch main is a transmission main, so we typically don't allow any taps to that. So there would be a secondary main for all of the taps. So that 4-inch on the east side, our records show it's PVC. If it's in good shape, there's no need to replace that. So the 20-inch would be a secondary transmission main that wouldn't have taps to it if it's built per our standards. Again, we don't have a design. It is in our 5-year plan, but it's more like 3, 4, 5 years out, so we haven't started any design work yet.
Okay. Thank you for that, Todd. Any other questions or comments on this item from the commission?
Can I ask a question about Mr. Pakash's comments there?
Mr. Schreier, yeah, go for it.
You say that there is a water main in the Columbus Street alley as well, or just they all go out to the First Street water main, that 4-inch? I'll put the cursor, there's a 4-inch water main over here. If I be by the city map, which we don't have in front of us, but I'm going to put my pointer on it. And are you saying that all these houses here go in a long sort of private service over to this 4-inch main?
Actually,
Todd?
actually it's the houses on the south side of Columbus Street that go to the east and tie into that main. It's a private line
So these houses here,
on the south side of Columbus Street.
which is right here,
That's south side.
I'm sorry, yeah, this area, right. This area goes over to this 4-inch main.
Yep.
Okay.
All right, I'm just gonna fill the gap with a few words here. I get worried about giving away right away because the city then has to buy it back if they ever need it. That said, this is a huge right of way for that dead end street. And I'm struggling, to be honest, with the prospect of a 20-inch water line's a big deal, and we don't want to do that poorly. But I'm struggling with that, so I don't know if any of the other commission has thoughts or feelings on this.
Sir, can I say one thing?
Yeah, Mr.
I
Huber.
would write we wouldn't if whatever it is, we wouldn't charge to, if you had to get it back, I wouldn't expect any money or payment for that.
Oh, thank you. That's nice. The one thing that you said, Mr. Huber, that struck me is there another request that might be better than giving the right-of-way versus a reduced setback that would allow you to do your project with keeping the access to the city to that right-of-way?
Every step of a government process has a process, so you got to go through the same thing the next time. And you know, realistically, if anybody's ever driven over there, there's nothing over there. And the actual city-owned property to the south, there is nothing there. We talked to the neighbors the other day, and he said that they have a serious problem. They're calling the cops all the time because there's a homeless problem that they sit in and they protrude onto their land. Because if you really look at this, in the future, there's going to have to be something done, or because you have 3 properties to the south, I believe, of the Columbus Street, which is really an alley. And all we're trying to do is improve this. And I would encourage everybody to drive out and see what we're doing. We're making it look really nice. We're adding property values so the tax base will go up to the street. And realistically, the other side of the street too, we're just trying to make a non-conforming property conforming so we can get a driveway in and then get a garage so people can park off the street.
Mr. Chair.
Vicki?
So this property qualifies as a small lot, and there are provisions within the ordinance that give allowances for small lots. As an example, when you have a small lot and you're trying to develop it or potentially redevelop it, the side yard setbacks get significantly reduced, and they could call this a side yard, and it would have to be a minimum of 4 feet from that side yard in order to meet that side yard setback. The 2 side yards together would have to be 12 feet, with one of them being no less than 4 feet. We could not deny them a building permit. Let's say if he had made the comment that to protect himself to be able to build back the home, could not deny a building permit for a home to be built. Even if he exceeded those setbacks, he could request a variance and cite the special circumstances of the existing small lot, the retention of the right-of-way, and how he wants to fit that similar footprint back. So other options, if a development project should come forward, it probably at that time would make more sense to determine, should we be looking at variances versus vacating of right-of-way?
Can I make a quick statement? Vicki, now is that considered though on First Avenue, is that considered the front or the side? Because usually they'll consider you have 2 fronts and then you got to go back 15 feet.
So
Vicki?
he's on a corner lot. He could pick the front, and the opposite is the rear, and then all other are sides. So if he picked the north lot line as his front, your front is not necessarily the side you take access from. You can pick your front when you're on a corner lot, and then the opposite lot line is the rear, and all others are the side. And even if you reduce this right-of-way, probably he's going to need a variance of some sort to get a detached garage or an attached garage, or even to rebuild. And again, if we saw that layout and what it looked like, we could probably give you a better idea of whether or not it would come to Zoning Board of Adjustment with a recommendation to approve.
I'm going to go to Mike Quasney. I lost you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, Vicki, what you're saying is that he could still do his project, he could still add on to his house without vacating this right-of-way, is what you said in your statement there.
Mr. Chair?
Vicki?
What I'm indicating is, if we had a site plan showing the project, we could give better direction as to whether or not it made sense to seek a variance versus vacating right-of-way. And looking at the size of the lot, the location of the existing home, even with the vacation of right-of-way, in all likelihood, he's going to need a variance in order to add on structurally to this lot, or if something should happen to the single-family residence, to build back on a similar structure. Again, we do have reduced setbacks. It does qualify as a small lot, but even so, to get reasonable use on the property, in all likelihood, he's going to have to come in for a variance. And you've seen us bring these before you in other circumstances where the size of the existing lots, these were a part of the city years ago that had extremely small lots. Some of the development consists of 2 and 3 lots, some consist of only 1 lot. And for those that have just that 1 lot provision in order to develop on, they typically do need variances whenever they're trying to upgrade the design and of the structural development on the property. We have cited that special circumstance as a reason to grant variances when they can't acquire additional right-of-way. And it's reasonable that they should anticipate that they want to have other features that a single-family residential development would have, such as a small garage, a storage shed, etc.
Like Eric said, I believe that I struggle with giving away the right-of-way, even though this is at the end of a block. And so I guess I'd make a motion to deny.
Can I say something real quick before we make a motion?
Mr. Huber, I'm going to let him finish, but
Okay.
there's discussion on the motion.
Understanding that he can come in and get a variance and still do the construction that he would like, I guess I would make a motion to deny based on what the stipulations the city has.
All right, Mike Quasney made the motion to deny the vacation of right-of-way. Is there a second to that motion? All right, Mike Gallagher seconded it. Discussion on the motion, Mr. Huber?
I would just recommend, number one, it's this is an extensive size of a right-of-way for where the area is. And I would just, if I would ask that maybe we could table this discussion until I had time to put a site plan together.
I would go with that.
Okay, to be honest, that's kind of where my thought process was heading. I'd like to, if we have other options, it'd be nice to see them before taking action.
Okay,
Vicky?
So tabling it would be the same as denying it. Then it's just off the table, and you would have to resubmit. Maybe the better recommendation would be to continue this for a month, and that would give him time to come in with a site plan. Staff could meet with him. We could look at what his options are, try to compromise on what could be supported for a variance, and that would leave that right-of-way for Public Works for that future 20-inch water main.
Mr. Huber, is a month a good amount of time to have those discussions?
We'll get on it.
Okay.
Okay, so I will take mine back and want to continue this until the next.
Well, the motion's on the floor, so I would.
Okay.
Let's vote on it with the idea if we do. Oh, yeah, there you go. Karen's gonna make a substitute motion.
Thank you. And Mr. Chair, that date would be the May 25th Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you. I make a motion, a substitute motion, to continue this item till May 25th.
All right, Karen made the substitute motion as she stated to continue to May 25th. And Eric Heikus seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion to continue to May 25th? Vince, I have you up. Are you?
Yes, actually, I've been waiting.
Oh.
And I wanted to submit a substitute. So Karen did that. My question would have been for the applicant, is he willing to wait and to review and to reconsider? And all those questions were answered, so thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
You just have to elbow me, Vince. All right, all those in favor of continuing to May 25th, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 7.
Good morning, Sarah Hansel with the Planning Projects Division. The last two items on the agenda today are requests to create 2 new tax increment financing districts. We'll review the first district, which is located in North Rapid City. This is the proposed Country Road West extension. Here's an aerial view of the property. This proposed district is about 23 acres in size. The applicant is Vanacker Development for Eastern Slope Land Corp. It's located at the terminus of Country Road. Property zoned medium density residential district and is in an area generally surrounded by single family homes and some townhomes. The property is undeveloped, however, residential lots have recently been platted. Here's some site photos looking into the property. This would be looking west where future Country Road will be extended. This is looking to the north at some of the other residential development that's currently under construction. This would be looking to the east where Country Road currently has its terminus. And to the south, again, at other residential development. Here's the lot layout. You can see the lots here that have been platted. And with platting, the applicant is required to make the improvements for Country Road in order to provide access to these lots. Country Road is a 3-lane collector, and as you may be familiar, generally when development occurs, developers are responsible for the first 3 lanes of streets that go through their development. And historically, tax increment financing has been prioritized for oversized costs or regional costs. So say if 5 lanes are required, the developer will be responsible for the first 3, and then the TIF will cover the other 2. We'll go into more detail about the project costs. But just be aware as you look at the site plan that this is a 3-lane collector and the applicant is proposing that it be funded with the TIF. The other thing to know about this collector street is that it is not a high priority on the city's major street plan. We have seen other TIF districts in the past that have funded collector streets where we really have a missing link in the street network. Homestead Street is probably the most recent example of where a TIF was approved for a collector street because we had this missing link in the street hierarchy that was providing problematic access for schools and circulation within an existing neighborhood. So while this is not necessarily a high priority on the major street plan for the transportation network, it is required to be provided with development. So in these instances, we really see this as more development driven. Here's a conceptual plan to show what the nature of the future development will look like. It includes 33 single-family homes, 7 duplex or townhome lots, and 72 multifamily units. Here's the proposed infrastructure. You can see that extension of Country Road to the west. In addition to the pavement, it also includes public utilities such as the water line, private utilities, paving, subgrade preparation, other grading, and street lighting. The total cost of the project are $898,000, with the TID really covering about 83% of those total costs. This won't be legible probably on your screen, but with the application, they did submit sort of a full cost estimate of what all would be included. The TIF committee reviewed this project at their meeting on March 21st, and they did actually recommend that one line item be removed. And that was about $74,000 in costs for engineering and construction administration that has already occurred. So you would note that difference here. So the costs that you're looking at are essentially what the TIF committee approved. It's about $1.5 million in total, and that includes about $643,000 in financing. Excuse me. The base valuation for this project is estimated at just over $200,000, and this district is expected to pay off within 8 years. One thing to know about this TIF district, and actually the other one that's on the agenda as well, is that it's expected to be classified as a local district. If we look back at many of the TIF districts that have been approved in Rapid City over the years, and especially recently, many of them have what's called an economic development or an industrial classification. Some examples of that would be Black Hills Energy TIF, the Black Hills Industrial Center for the battery plant, the Block 5 project that was just recently approved for downtown. These all have generally economic development components. For this project, we're anticipating, because there's no commercially zoned property, that it will be classified as a local district. And what you need to know about that is that that will impact how the tax revenues for the school district are handled. for an economic development or industrial TIF, the loss of tax revenue to the school district is made up across the entire state, because we want to hold the school district harmless for any TIF district that's created. If this is classified as a local district, that means that those loss in tax revenues need to be made up within the school district. So now we're really putting that impact on the taxpayers within our city area, more specifically the school district boundary, which is similar to the city's boundary, but not exactly the same. So that's just something to keep in mind when looking at the tax impact of this particular request. This is the amortization schedule that the applicant has submitted. You can see their proposed 9% interest rate and an anticipated payoff time schedule about 8 years, and that accrual of just under $650,000 in financing costs. With every tax increment district, we ask the applicant to identify, what are the costs of your project, what are the revenues that you'll be receiving as the developer of the project, and what is the gap that you're needing the TIF to help you fill, so that we can kind of look at the need for the TIF and how it's really, helping a project at a level that's appropriate for public assistance. So with this district, they're showing loss of about $1 million without the TIF funding, and with the TIF, they're showing revenue of just over $1 million. If we look at a basic equation for return on investment with this district, we'd see a 22.5% return on investment for just phases 2 through 4. And if we look at phase 3 alone, which phase 3 alone is the TIF boundary, it would be a 125% return on investment. With TIF districts, we look at economic impact. As I noted previously, there's no commercially or industrial zoned property within this boundary. So the applicant is showing, the impact of their construction, that they're creating construction jobs, and that's having a multiplier effect in the community. They also note that with the community's immense housing needs at the moment, that also has an economic impact in terms of providing workforce housing. The next series of slides goes through the state statutes and the local criteria that are associated with looking at whether a project meets the intent of state law. The main one from state statute is that the not less than 25% of the area is blighted, or not less than 50% will stimulate general economic welfare of the state. So for this application, the applicant notes that it is undeveloped property that requires infrastructure, that it is a relatively small tract size, which limits options, that the new housing will benefit the community, and that the value of nearby properties will be enhanced. State law also has several criteria related to blight to give better indication of what that means. And the applicant notes that, again, it's undeveloped property, that there are significant drainage conveyances, wetlands and street improvements noted. Staff does want to point out, and this is in the staff report as well, that while we do acknowledge the immense importance of wetlands, we don't think that their existence means blight. And I've lost power. I think maybe if I can get some backup, I'll just keep going. Thank you. There are other criteria for blight as well. But by state law, open areas can be considered blight. So for this project, the applicant is noting that water infrastructure will improve emergency access and firefighting ability for not just this property, but properties within the area, and that the drainage facilities that are required as part of residential development will help to reduce potential for localized flooding. Thanks, Kip. If we move on to the city's tax increment financing policy, we look at the purposes behind TIF, which is to encourage development and redevelopment of deteriorated or blighted property, to stimulate economic development, and to increase investment in areas where it would otherwise be stagnant or stalled. And so the applicant is noting that this would be developing property that currently is not developed, that new housing options will help stimulate and improve economic welfare and prosperity of the community, and that the TIF would encourage development of property that would not be possible without TIF financing. They go on to emphasize the importance of having new housing options in the community, and that the proposed project will be building this collector street, which is identified on the city's major street plan. Thank you.
You're welcome.
purpose of using TIF locally. Within the city's TIF policy, we have the uses of TIF, which are, what we're prioritizing this program for, oversizing costs, which I noted earlier that, there really isn't an oversizing component for this project in any way because it's just a 3-lane collector. I should point out, however, that there is an existing oversize agreement for a water main, and if this TIF project is approved, we would like to stipulate that oversize agreement be rescinded so that both the TIF and the oversize agreement are not paying for the same infrastructure. And this application includes interest and administrative fees due to the city. The other criteria in the poly really is harkening back to this idea of property which is blighted, which we've reviewed. The project does comply with the city's comprehensive plan in terms of the future land use. And the project pro forma is showing their losses with and without the TIF. For new or expanded employment, the applicant is talking about their construction impact that they'll have by creating construction jobs during the life of the construction. And they do note affordable housing as being part of their criteria, but we want to point out that this project is for workforce housing and doesn't meet that criteria, which is this criteria 4, which is not met with this application. So with that, I just want to remind the Planning Commission that the state statute gives this board the authority to make a recommendation on whether a boundary should be created. If the Planning Commission recommends that a boundary be created, the boundary and then the project plan go forward to the City Council for their recommendation. So we ask today that you take a look at the proposed project and the criteria and make a recommendation on whether or not to approve the boundary. And I'm available for any questions, as is the applicant. Thanks for your patience for the presentation issues.
Thanks, Dara. You did better than I would if I lost all my material. I'd have a speaker request on this from John Roberts, and I've got a few council or commission folks up here as well. John, do you want to address us before we go to the commission?
Not especially. No, I'm here if there's any questions, if anybody has any questions.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you.
Eric Hikas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in a past life, I worked really hard in Billings on their tax increment financing. There was some true blight in those areas and spot zoning and some real challenges there. So the term blight can be overused, right? And this is a comment and my own personal opinion, but sometimes the word underutilized is a better exchange for blight, and in some situations this looks like one. So that's my comment. My question is, you said that there's not an affordable housing element here, but there's a workforce housing element. Could you describe that or define that a little more, Sarah, what the nuance is there between the two? I mean, is the term bridge housing, is that an acceptable option, or?
I'm not sure. That's actually a new term to me. But so the city's TIF policy identifies affordable housing as being units that are for individuals and families who are making 80% of area median income or less, and that they're only paying 30% of their income on that housing. And so in Rapid City, the median family income is about $55,000, so it'd be 80% of that or less. This project has not been presented as selling lots or providing apartment units that will meet that criteria. It will be essentially market rate housing. They haven't indicated whether, exactly what level it would be brought on the market, but we just know that it's not specifically geared towards that low income housing.
Okay. So the bridge term was kind of brought forward in Jackson, Wyoming, and it was intended to bridge the gap between, affordable housing and then the need for housing. And the example they used, I remember at the time, was the police officer who is married to the teacher. They need a place to live too, so yep. This was intended to bridge it sounds like there's some parallels here, so.
No shortage of buzzwords in planning,
yeah,
really, right?
Okay, that does answer my question. Thank you, Sarah.
Mike Kwasny.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The surrounding areas where the housing is now, there were no TIFs offered for any of those, is that correct?
There have been TIFs used for other residential developments.
In this area right here?
Not this exact area, but North Rapid City, I believe that in Auburn Hills.
Can I
had one. Yeah, you
answer
go ahead.
this question?
John?
Thank you very much. So directly to the east of here, on West Country Road, so Caitlin, that whole subdivision was a TIF. So there's also been a TIF to the north of this project. Auburn Hills had a TIF on it. One thing that I do want to bring in because of some of Eric's questions, one of the main components that I see to this is putting West Country Road to the property line to the west of here, which will open up, we determined between 400 and 600 more acres for development that won't get opened up without that. And then we probably should have got some feedback from the fire department, because what this does by opening up Petros Lane to West Country Road is it gives a south access to Auburn Hills, which adds another exit out of Auburn Hills, which currently only has 2 for, I don't know how many homes are in there now, 800? I don't know how many homes are up there currently, but it keeps expanding. So this is, in my opinion, it's pretty detrimental for the road network in that area. So, but yes, there's been multiple TIFs in that area up there.
Okay. How does the landscaping compare to the, on either side, the housing that's there? Is it similar landscaping? Is it, if they did not require a TIF, how is it, the terrain different that would require a little more work?
Well, one of the major components is if you look at West Country Road, roughly where, probably 200 feet up from where the corner is on I think it's Kyle. Yeah, that one's fine. So if you look at, it's kind of hard to see, but you can see West Country Road that's coming directly to the northwest there.
Yep.
And where it comes into the road that goes to the south. So about 200 feet past there is where we need to make that transition over the top of that drainage. So there's going to have to be a box culvert that goes underneath there for the drainage that comes from the hill behind there. And, you know, no matter what happens, if the TIF goes forward, fantastic. If the TIF doesn't go forward, we'll have to take Country Road to Petros anyway, but that's where it will end, which is roughly about where the end of that light area is there. So Country Road will not connect to the west, which will open up the area out there, which will also put water and sewer to that area, which won't be in if we stop that road there. You know, without the TIF, this project is not going to go forward. It's just not a big enough piece of property without the TIF to be able to make it pencil out. Nobody in their right mind does a project that makes no money or loses money. You can't do it.
Okay, thank you.
Vince?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Sarah, if I can go back to when you were pointing out how the schools are going to be funded. You said that because it's the state that determines that, and that the taxpayers in this area could be responsible for funding the schools?
If I may address that, it wouldn't be the taxpayers in this area specifically. It would be the taxpayers within the entirety of the Rapid City Area School District boundary.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I follow up on that, Sarah? So this loss of revenue that we're talking about, is that just, so currently this is assessed at $200,000, or what we're talking about is the school's portion of that $200,000 assessment? Is that the loss that we're talking about, or is it a different number?
Good question. So this is a chart showing sort of the lifespan of a tax increment financing district. And I don't have that tool up. So the taxing entities are the school district, the county, the city, and water districts. Those are the main taxing entities. Where you see the base valuation, that is where, so with the $200,000 valuation, the county, the city, and the water district are going to receive taxes on the $200,000 valuation during the life of the district. But for every tax increment financing district, we need to hold the school district harmless for the loss in revenues, even on the increment. So for every district we approve, that triangle of that gray-green color, that loss in revenue to the school district has to be made up either across the entire state or within our Rapid City area school district boundary. It happens to be that most districts are classified in the way that we do get to stretch that out over the entire state, as opposed to just here locally. We anticipate that this district will need to make up that triangle of lost revenue for the school district's portion alone within our community. Now, and just to put that one other way, that gray triangle, the city, the county, and the water district, they just forgo that revenue during that period, but the school district cannot.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
if I might just add one more thing, we did ask the Department of Revenue if we could estimate what that impact is, so we could kind of put a number on it to make it easier to think about and be tangible. They reevaluate those equations based on school budgets and property valuation, so they couldn't give an exact indication of what that would be per these two applications, but they did note that currently there's about 7 cents in valuation for every $1,000 for residential property. So that means if you have a home valued at $350,000, right now your tax bill, there's about $25. That's accounting for our existing TIDs that have local classifications.
Can I make one more quick comment?
Sure, John.
Thank you very much. And my numbers may be wrong, so I may need Sarah's help here. But I do believe that there's 4 or 5 TIFs that are paying off this year in 2020. And that number on what's going to come back in taxes is about $5 million a year. So we are gaining a lot this year. We're gaining a lot next year too. I think there's 2 or 3 of them next year. And that was the intent, at least of me, when I first got on the city council, is we knew that there was going to be a payoff on these TIFs in the future. And right now, and I'm sure that Mr. Skull will say the same thing here in a minute, right now with the need in our community for housing, I think we really need to step up and we need to just accelerate things. I mean, we know right now that we are thousands of units short in Rapid City. You know, there was a question asked about affordable housing on this piece of property. I would have loved to have done affordable housing on this property rather than on Omaha Street because it would have been so much easier for me. But I couldn't do it on this property because it does not set within the boundaries that I need to have it set in to be able to get low-income tax credits. So, you know, would this be a great place for low income? Absolutely, but we are very tied to where we can do that within Rapid City. So is it going to be affordable for most people? I think so. If you look at the piece of property coming right into Petros it would be on the right-hand side, so on the southwest corner as you come into or southeast quarter, or northeast quarter as you come into the property. Those apartments that are going to be put in there, they're not going to be high-end apartments. They're going to be what I would call the lower end of the, you know, average range in Rapid City right now. I mean, we're not looking at really high-end, which is going in this area. We're trying to provide something that the average person in Rapid City can afford. Thank you.
John, I thought you were only here for questions.
I can never stop speaking, you know.
Eric Heikes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd offer up a motion to create a boundary and district with those staff stipulations in mind you can clean that up as needed, but I'd throw that out there.
All right. Eric Heikus made a motion, if I understand it, to approve a resolution to create a tax increment district boundary and adopt a project plan for the project we're talking about. Is there a second to that motion?
Mr. Chair,
Vicky?
a suggested amendment to the motion maker. If it is your intent to approve creation of the district and the project plan, please do so with the recommended stipulations of approval.
Work for you? All right. Is there a second to Eric's motion? Mike Gallagher seconded the motion. Mike Quasney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I really like the fact that the streets would be extended with this increment. I think that's something that we tend not to do. We don't finish and allow for those things to intersect properly in some of the projects that we do. So I like that part. I hope that it does create an area. We do have housing needs, and I like that we're looking at ways to grow our areas. I just wanted to make the comment that I really like that road would get extended with that tax increment.
Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was on the TIF committee that approved this project. I did not vote for that. I voted against it. And there's some reasons why I did that, and I want to make sure that everybody understands why I did that. Number one, this road is not a high priority for a TIF, in my opinion. It's something that is developer-driven, and so I have some issues with what they're doing. They have private utility fees in there, and we talked about that at the committee. And the only way that our policy allows that is if the city council approves it. And so that would require that the city council take a good look at the staff report, at the project plan, and what those costs would be, and they would approve that. You know, sometimes not everybody looks at all the fine print, and so that bothers me a little bit. There was a lot of things in this particular TIF that I have issues with, and I guess it's to me, a TIF is supposed to be there for the benefit of the community as a whole, and that could be a lot of things. For instance, you mentioned Homestead. The ability to make that street continuous has been on a lot of people's minds for a long time, and that was really necessary, and if that happens with the TIF, that was appropriate. This one is, in my opinion, does not meet my criteria for what a TIF should be. The other thing is I wanted to mention that we noticed in the staff report, in the project plan that's presented to us, that they did take out the costs that they had already submitted or had already completed, and those are not allowable in our TIF policy to begin with. So they did take that out after the meeting. I looked at the amortization table that was presented here and the project plan, and it states that it's the same amount as, or excuse me, the interest is the same amount as was presented earlier. So I'm assuming that would have to change.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Sarah?
Thank you, Karen. That's correct. You know, so they'll only be able to pull loans on the amount that's approved in the project plan. And interest is only ever reimbursed based on the actual amount accrued. And so that's correct. The amount eligible for financing will be proportionately reduced by the amount that the project costs are reduced. So if this is approved, we'll have that updated before it goes to council. Thank you.
That's perfect. That's what I was hoping would happen, just so it's correct when it goes forward. The one good thing that I thought about this TIF that I did like was the fact that it was going to connect, what's that road? Not Champion, but the road to the north. Can't remember the name.
Chalkstone.
Chalkstone, thank you, John. Yes, that idea of connecting that appealed to me, gives you a better connection through that way. So that is the one positive thing that I saw. But other than that, I just felt that this does not meet my criteria for a TIF, so I just wanted to state that.
Vince?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually spent a great deal of time walking the streets in both south and north of this TIF district proposal. And the one thing that I note, and the one thing that I'm in favor of, is what Mike and Karen have already said. The connectivity is, to me, would be extremely important, especially when it comes to services, city services, fire, law. That area north of this TIF is growing, and these homes are not would be affordable housing in that north of that. So it's inconsistent with that property north, and actually some of the property east. It is always, whenever we get TIFs, it's always a question, and it's always a question of, what's the best benefit for all of Rapid City? So looking at that connectivity, I think that's one of the best things about this project that I'm in favor of.
All right, the motion on the floor is to approve the tax increment district boundary and project plan in accordance with the stipulations listed by staff. Any further discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. All right. The motion carries with Karen voting no. Item number 8.
Item number 8 is a proposed tax increment district for what's being named the High Point North Lift Station District. The applicant is Sitework Specialists Incorporated for Watershed Development 2 LLC. This project is located in southwest Rapid City, north of Sheridan Lake Road in the High Point North subdivision area. It's zoned for low density development, and is noted in the applicant's application materials. The area will develop with upscale single-family homes in an area that's known for its natural forested setting and topographic elevation differentials. This district is 146 acres in size, has some development occurring presently and more platting occurring within the area that's being shown as graded. Go through some site photos here. Had some trouble accessing into this site the day that I got site photos, so this isn't exactly looking into the TIF district boundary, but this would be north of the area in question, and then this is looking to the east where you see some of that construction occurring. This would be within the district boundary. This would be looking to the west outside of the district boundary along Cloud Peak Drive, and this would be looking south into the existing phases of High Point North. As noted in the title, the purpose of this tax increment financing district is to develop a lift station and the associated infrastructure that goes along with that, including a sewer line and a force main. Here you can see their plans submitted showing, it's a little bit hard to see, but midway down the graphic on the right-hand side is the location of that lift station. And that will enable the installation of a line connecting to property to the east, which is important for this project, and I'll point that out later. The TIF boundary is highlighted in red here, and so there are 5 total phases with this residential development. Phase 1A and 1B and Phase 5 are outside of the TIF boundary. Phase 2, 3, and 4 are within the TIF boundary. So the TIF area alone is intended to create about 145 residential lots that are within the area in red, and this is the area that would be served by the lift station that's proposed to be funded. The area outside of that is not served by the lift station. Here's a close-up of the site plan showing the lift station area. And this graphic shows the TIF boundary in red and the lift station service area outside of the TIF boundary in blue. And so the applicant is noting that by extending the sewer line to that property to the east, that will enable all of the property in blue to be able to also utilize the lift station in the future. And this would be a conceptual number, but up to about 245 additional homes that could utilize this infrastructure once it's in place. The applicant is requesting just under $6 million in project costs, about half of which are for construction and professional fees, the other half of which are for financing. The anticipated base valuation for this project is just over $20,000, and they're anticipating a 14-year payoff. As we discussed at length for the other application, we do anticipate this project to be classified as a local district, which will have that local impact to make up for the school district loss in revenue. This is the amortization schedule. They are also projecting a 9% interest rate with a 14-year payoff, and that accumulates up to about $3.4 million in financing costs, which could be repaid through the TIF. And with every TIF, to talk about it again, we look at the pro forma. So what are the costs that are associated with the construction, and what are the revenues that the developer anticipates, and how is the tax increment financing helping with supporting that project in the gap? You'll notice the construction phases at the top, so those correlate back to this graphic that we looked at, phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. This project pro forma is the one that was submitted to the Tax Increment Financing Committee, and it showed about a 9% loss without the TIF and about a 28% gain with the TIF. The applicant noted in that meeting that there was an error in this pro forma and that it needed to be revised for moving forward to the Planning Commission and the TIF Committee. You can see that phase 1 doesn't include any construction costs. The revised pro forma adds costs of about $1.7 million for mass grading for phase 1. And so what that means is that during phase 1, the larger area for the whole subdivision was mass graded. And that would include portions of phase 2, 3, and 4, which are within the TIF boundary. And so they've included those costs with phase 1, which has increased their costs and decreased their revenue. So according to this pro forma, we're looking at a approximate 20% loss without the TIF and just under 7% gain with the TIF. This is itemized in the staff report, but there were also some other changes made to costs at other elements of this plan as well. Economic impact, again, similar to the last application, this is really kind of focused on construction jobs during the life of the building period and the impact of creating more high-end homes for our community, which when we look at the housing spectrum, the housing market as a whole in our community, having homes for people to move up into so that those more affordable or sort of midlife homes can become available for those needing those. This set of slides goes through the state statutes. We're looking at conditions for blight and looking at general economic welfare of the state. We talked about blight during the TIF committee application for this, and it kind of gets down to not blighted property, but the undeveloped nature of it, and that the desire to have a lift station to serve the density that's required is preferable over having individual septic tanks. Purposes of the city's TIF policy is to encourage redevelopment of blighted property, stimulating economic development, and increasing private investment. Allowable costs for this are extension of offsite sewer, water, street, and public improvements to the development site. And then most notably, number 5, regional lift stations are an eligible cost under the city's TIF policy, as well as financing. It does comply with a comprehensive plan for future land use and will not result in net loss of pre-existing tax revenues to the city. There's several other additional criteria which was reviewed by the TIF committee, and they recommended that it did meet at least a minimum amount of this criteria. So again, similar to the last application, the Planning Commission is asked to specifically review the boundary and make a recommendation as to whether or not a boundary should be created for this property with the public improvements noted. I'm available for any questions, and the applicant and the developer are in the room as well.
Thank you, Sarah. We have a couple of speaker requests on this item as well. Dan Wank, if you'd like to address the commission.
Good morning. I'm Dan Wank, and some of the questions I have were addressed in Sarah's presentation. I'm not here in opposition to this development at all. I want to make that perfectly clear. What I have is some questions based on the things that you saw. I am adjacent to this property. I overlook the development. I'm watching this go on a daily basis, and I attended the meetings in the fall of 21 and early 22 where this was approved and platted. And at that time, there was no mention of the need for a TIF for this development whatsoever. And it also platted, I believe, 168 sites within this development. When you look at the pro forma only includes revenue from 128 sites. The previous presentation said there was 145, but the pro forma shows 128. At 128 sites, that eliminates 40 sites, which I understand from the presentation, some of the construction cost for those additional 40 sites is included in the pro forma, but the revenue is not. I don't understand why. When you extend those 40 sites at their rate of $150,000 a site, that's $6 million of additional revenue. When you look at that $6 million in this overall development, basically it changes their negative of 19, almost 20%, to a positive 5% without the TIF. If they get the TIF and you include that revenue, it basically means about a 40% return. Is that an appropriate level of return for using public financing? That seems out of line to me. So my question is twofold for the commission. Is this TIF necessary if you consider the full amount of revenue, and should it be considered? And if it's necessary, is it necessary at $6 million, or is there another number? See if I had anything else. That's it. If there are other questions after presentations or questions, I would hope that I'd be allowed to ask them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wing. Andy Scull, are you only here for questions, or do you have anything to answer?
Good morning, Commission. Andy Scull, 2430 Archer Way, owner of Watershed Development 2, as well as site work specialist. So I guess number one is, I think that Sarah inadvertently maybe misinformed a little bit. Could you pull up the application and the graphics on that application, please, so I could help here? And this will help answer some of Mr. Wink's questions as well.
This one?
Yeah, there should be more. If I was to go to within the report, do you have the report handy? So within the application paperwork that's attached online, I just briefly looked at the amended one with the amended pro forma. There was some graphics, and I guess there's maybe a little bit of confusion or misunderstanding. I just want to make sure everybody's clear on. Right there, that right. Can we use this over here?
Here, it's here.
Okay. So what is incorrect, what Sarah inadvertently made a mistake of, the yellow actually is the TIF district. What the graphic that you previously showed was the service area. So within the yellow line is actually the full district. And then if we go back to the previous slide right there, that is actually the service area. So the service area, now go back to the zoning or the phase map too, please, Sarah. Okay, there's the phase map. So that red area, phase 2, 3, and 4 is the service area for which within this particular development that would be served by the lift station as well as the neighboring property to the east. The TIF district itself is all 5 phases in terms of the revenue. The entire development, I believe, has somewhere around 168 lots, 170, somewhere in that ballpark. The service, what is being serviced by the lift station within the development is the 128 units. So I don't know what the confusion is there. And then in terms of the project cost, so within phase one, there was the mass grading. None of the infrastructure costs associated or mass grading associated with phase one or phase 5 is included within the pro forma. What was added, the 1.7 million added was specifically just the grading cost associated with phases 2, 3, and 4. So, yeah, so that phase 1 construction is only the mass grading portion associated with phases 2, 3, and 4. Is that clear? Did that help everybody? So in phase, you have the phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4 construction costs, which is specific to those areas on that map. And the 1.7 million is also specific to areas phase 2, 3, and 4, but it was part of a phase 1 contract, if that is so to speak. So it is pro-rationed out to just that area. You guys all look very confused.
So Andy, this already happened? I
The
assume?
grading is in progress.
In progress?
Yes.
Okay.
But we're not asking for any funding. All the TIF is to fund is the lift station and the associated infrastructure with the lift station. Has no cost for grading, no cost for roads. It's simply information on the pro forma specific to phases 2, 3, and 4.
Just to establish your total cost for the development?
That is correct, yes. It has nothing to do with the TIF funding.
I'm sorry I interrupted. You can
Yeah,
keep going.
no, that's fine. So I'm trying to help answer the questions. I'm here for any additional questions.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you. Additional questions for Mr. Skull? Eric Hikas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Andy, I follow. I'm tracking with your math. Yeah, thank you. There's a lot to be said about if we fix the high-end development, it will fix a lot of our housing issues. I think right now the situation in our community with all the mean that we built over the years for the past 2 decades, the demand for higher end is now cannibalizing the middle end, and we are creating an effect where we're burning the candle on both ends with the shortage of low end, and there's a real delta needed for high end right now. And I think that this is a great project, and I think that we underestimate the need for high end housing in our community. I would offer that up. Thank you.
Karen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a TIF that I think is a benefit to the community, and that's my perception of what TIF should be. I supported this at the committee meeting, and I will support it again today. I think to have a lift station versus I would say the on-site sewer sites, to me, is of benefit. I mean, who wouldn't want that to have a lift station over, septic tanks? And I just think that's what this TIF does. It allows that, and it also allows us to have the ability to go to the east and to places that are adjacent but are not directly on this property. So it serves a large portion of the area. And I also want to thank Mr. Skull for the change in the pro forma. That's awesome compared to what we saw earlier. So I think that's great. So I support this, and if anybody doesn't have any questions, I would make a motion, but I'll wait and see if anybody's got questions.
Vince?
Well, I don't really have a question. I just want to confirm that reading the staff report, it does explain exactly the pro forma. And so I didn't miss anything. So, but again, Mr. Skull, again, thanks for the additional information, but I think it's also explained in the staff report.
All right, Karen, we'll go back to you if you want.
I would like to make a motion to support this TIF, approve the project plan, approve the creation, and any stipulations that would be on the project plan.
I'll second.
All right, Karen made the motion to approve the resolution to create a tax increment financing district and resolution to adopt a project plan in accordance with the stipulations listed. Okay, and Vince seconded that motion. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, that takes us to the end of the traditional agenda. Are there any staff items for us today, Vicki?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one. Some of you may recall that back in 2018, we did an ordinance amendment to Chapter 2, and that is the part of the Rapid City Municipal Code that describes the makeup of the Planning Commission. At that time, similar to today, we were having difficulties in finding representation that was specific to each ward. Similar to council, Planning Commission, when originally created, required that representation from every ward be equally distributed on the Planning Commission. And what we saw happening is that we had some openings for an extended period of time because we just couldn't get some people in some wards that wanted to put in that application, or those potentially that did just were not qualified to be making some of the hard decisions that you make. So in 2018, with the help of Wade Nyberg, we submitted an ordinance amendment to the City Council, and it was readily approved that eliminated the requirement that each ward be represented. It recommended, but it did not require. And what that allowed us to do is to try to balance on the Planning Commission both geographic data as well as demographic data. And that's how we've had some minority representation brought forward. And what was brought to our attention, thank you, Kinsley, who always dives deep into everything when we ask her questions, she noticed in the bylaws that we didn't make that same change. And so, as you know, Eric Ottenbacher has stepped down. We're trying to fill that alternate position. We're looking at the demographics in doing that, but the individual that's interested is comes from a ward that's heavily represented already. So I don't think we would pick that individual anyway because we do want to balance that. But we do have other candidates that would let us look at the demographics and try to get more minority representation on the Planning Commission. So if you concur that we should follow up, we forgot to do it in 2018, we'll bring forward an amendment to the bylaws that follows the same language as the ordinance amendment we did in 2018 to Chapter 2 that said that ward representation is recommended but not required. And then again, that opens up the door for us to look at demographics. So if you support that, then we'll be bringing that forward in the near future.
Do you need a motion on it?
I think so.
Okay. What does the commission think?
I make a motion to accept Vicky's proposal that we open it up and to not require, but I'm sorry, what was the exact word?
Maybe
So-
align the
so-
bylaws with the,
right. A revision of the
ordinance.
bylaws to align with Chapter 2 of the Rapid City Municipal Code.
That's my motion.
all right. I'm gonna give it to Mike Quasney on the second. Any discussion on that from the commission? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Anything else? I'm gonna chime in with one. I didn't wanna belabor the TIF because it's more of a regional thing, but every time we approve more development applications out in that neck of the woods, Sheridan Lake Road, still 2 lanes coming into town, more houses being built. Todd? Vicky? I don't need a response, I just need to know that it's in your thoughts.
Going on Sheridan Lake Road right now, or this year, from
Utilities.
Catron to Corral, and
Yep.
then next year will be the full reconstruction to 5 lanes.
But still Catron going out.
Yeah, our capacity issue is actually the intersection of Catron and Sheridan Lake Road, and Sheridan Lake Road and Corral is where our capacity issues are at those signals. So this project will alleviate the road bottlenecks.
I hope so. That sounds great. Thank you. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The other thing is on that, those ulterior entrances into those areas, they should also, as we're developing, we really got to have more than Sheridan Lake Road, even if it's 10 lanes. I just really, it's confusing to me why we can't figure out how to get some more in and out, so.
Mr. Chair?
Vicky?
Just as a friendly reminder that all of the development projects that you've seen in this area over the last several years have required a traffic impact study. And with High Point Ranch, they did an amendment to show what those traffic patterns would be. The city engineer has looked at the timing of that signal at Dunsmore and Sheridan Lake Road to try to get individuals in and out in a timely manner. He's made some adjustments. I don't think there's ever been an instance where someone's had to set through a light twice. In Rapid City, when you have to set through a light 2 times, it's horrific. For those of us who have lived in larger cities, it's, dang, I got through in just 2 changes. This is great. So it is relative to what you are accustomed to, but anything and everything that happens is done as per the recommendation of the traffic engineers. We have on our major street plan future streets that will alleviate a lot of traffic from Sheridan Lake Road. The problem is some of that property is not desirable for development right now because of lack of utilities. Les Holler's Way, as an example, will be a big relief once it's connected all the way over to Sheridan Lake Road. And then finally, it always gets down to money. We see the answer, we know the solution. Right now, the Sheridan Lake Road is split between the city and the county, and just finding the funding to bring forward those improvements is very difficult. But we talk about it often, we know what the right answer is, which is working with developers, probably securing another TIF, and coming up with a solution.
All right. All right, Karen made the motion to adjourn. Vince seconded it. All those in favor, please say aye.
Uh-oh. Well, I'm glad you brought it up. It always needs to be answered.
There's traffic impact studies that said that Rushmore Crossing was okay too.